I think we're live and we didn't have an intro. So we had a little technical glitch, but that's the fun of it. That's when you know that things are live. So if you are joining, hi, sorry we didn't have our glorious 5-minute intro, but Mitch and I got to hear the intro and that counts for something. So say hello, as always. If you're new here, say hi to us in the comments. Let us know where you're coming in from and where you're joining from, because we are so excited to have you here today. I am having my tea today from sunny Florida, where the humidity is hot, and I can assure you summer is already on the way. So greetings from Florida. Let me know where you guys are coming in from, where Mitch and I are going to have an awesome conversation today. But before I bring Mitch in, as always, if you have not Google stalked him already, it's very fun to Google stalk him. So if you haven't already, I would highly recommend it. But Mitch is an amazing person. He's one of those people that has so many awesome titles. He's a podcast host. He's a keynote speaker. He's a coach. He's a coach's coach. I have no idea how he's able to do all of these amazing things, but somehow he is. And shameless plug to start us off, I will also be resharing in the chat the beta program that I will be setting up in the next couple of weeks. So if you are excited about all things branding, your presence in terms of business, give it a click and would love to see you there. But please, wherever you are in the world, hi Dawn from Victoria and Jen from St. Louis, please help me in welcoming Mitch to our coffee meeting.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Mitch. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
I was so excited about today that I almost don't even need to prepare because I already have a list of questions running through my mind for you.
Well, that's the thing is I feel like we're just getting to have, coffee together and hang out. So I was so looking forward to it as well. This is going to be great.
Coffee with all of our new close friends. They're going to be your close friends soon too.
Exactly. I love it. I am so honored to be here. I love what you do. We're going to have a lot of fun.
We're going to have a lot of fun. And I feel like I was saying before, but you do, and we've talked about this before offline, but you do a lot of things. Like you have a lot of balls up in the air. So I think when people start to Google you, they're going to be like, holy crap, this guy is super impressive. But I feel like what I love about you so much is you have a relatability that even though you are so accomplished, it feels doable, pun intended, with the dream think do. So how do you answer the question of like, how do you do it all? Or maybe what's the most fun out of all the things you do?
It's fun that you asked that because you look like one of those people that's just doing all sorts of great stuff. I look at you and I marvel at all the things you accomplish. It's like, how does she get it all done? And I think when you're on the other side of it, it's like some days we're just holding it together with sweat and duct tape, right? Like, and other days it's like, okay, this thing is working, woohoo, right? So I'll tell you what, one of the things that I'm wildly blessed to say now is that, everything that I do falls under the umbrella of my podcast name, which is Dream, Think, Do. I don't know about you, but I'm a simple guy. My brain thinks in simple ways, and Dream, Think, Do is hopefully catchy, but it's also a 3-step sequence that I believe it takes to actually make dreams happen. Is you got to give yourself permission to dream first, right? To do it without a lot of thinking, without a lot of logistics, without a lot of planning. Got to give yourself that permission to dream first. Then think second, right? Like to actually put a plan in place, to think through strategy, all of those things, and then take massive action. And everything that I do now falls under that umbrella. So, I've got the podcast, I do coach, I speak, all of that, but it all kind of falls under those topics. So those are areas that I feel like I could speak on, coach on, help with anywhere. Now, if we start talking about quantum physics or math or molecular science, I may not be able to help you at all, right? But if we're in those lanes, it's awesome. And I think a big part of that too is that I've had seasons of my life where I have not functioned in my passion areas and in my sweet spots. And so now that I'm here, even though it's not always perfect and it's kind of messy sometimes, and some days are long hours, I'm grateful for that because I've had those seasons and those days where I was as far from it as possible. So I can cherish it, whether it's a good day or a hard day.
Well, and I feel like you have touched, and this is not, millions of lives. If you count the podcast and the speeches and, the app and everything that you've been doing under the Dream, Think, Do umbrella. And I'm curious, out of all of the feedback that you get, whether that's at a keynote conference with people coming up to you afterwards, or whether that's in a coaching session, where do you think people have the most trouble? Is it in the dream? Is it in the think? Or is it in the do? Is it like really easy for people to come up with the dreams, but really hard to think through them, or harder to actually do them, or maybe hard to dream? Maybe it's tough to dream them up.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. So, and we could break that down in 1,000 different ways, but I would say, for the most part, probably the biggest challenge happens in an area that most people might be surprised to hear, in that I think it's in the dreaming. And when I say that mostly to and about successful people, because that's who's listening to your show. That's who's doing Coffee with Kim, right? If you're making time to, do this kind of thing, you are a successful person. You are trying to figure out ways to maximize life, live your best life, do business right, all those things. So I can say that, right? But the thing with successful people, and you and I have talked about this offline, is that success is awesome. It's fantastic, all of those things, but it's also dangerous, because oftentimes when we start to get successful in a given area, then there's a part of us that starts to say, well, I don't want to break anything. I don't want to change anything. I don't want to shift anything. And so we start to kind of limit ourselves on what we're willing to try, or where we're willing to do something new, or where we're willing to step out and dream in a new area. So oftentimes, like, we'll do events and people will come, and, if they're being honest, the express purpose of the event is to help people to dream and then connect, right? And if people are being honest, a lot of times they'll be like, I came just to figure out what my dreams are again. And the people telling me this are not sloths. They're not couch potatoes that have never done anything. They're people that look wildly successful, but they're like, it's just been a while since I've given myself permission to dream in new areas. So I kind of came to figure that out. So I think, each one of those areas, dream, think, do, represents, certain opportunities and certain pitfalls. But if I had to gauge it, for a lot of people, it's the dreaming side and giving yourself permission to start.
Well, and I think that ties so far into Antonio, who's here today and who introduced us, because you lose that ability to dream because you also go on autopilot.
Right.
Things are working, the wheels are working. You're like, I'm making money, I'm doing these things. But I do think the pandemic, as awful as it was, and it has been awful, has really kind of jolted people to say, like, is this my dream? Like, have you seen an uptick in the people that you're coaching, or maybe it's new podcast subscribers who maybe during the pandemic sort of kind of woke up from this autopilot haze of like, I'm not living my dream?
Right. Well, it's hilarious Antonio's on, because you're right. Like, he connected us, which I'm so grateful for. Right. And I was actually going to give him a shout out anyway, because his new book is freaking awesome. That Stop Living on Autopilot. And he speaks to something in the book that I think is so powerful. And it just struck me so profoundly. And I think it applies to your question about, what is the pandemic? What has this done to us? What's this done to our psyche? What's it made people aware of? And one of the things Antonio talks about in his book that I think is so freaking powerful. It's one of those, as a content creator, you probably have this too, where you hear a concept, you're like, damn it, why didn't I come up with that? Right? Like, oh, it's so good. But of course, Antonio came up with it. But, he's just talking about, in the book, he talks about how we start to, we can win, and we can win for a season, and we can be successful in a given area. But then often what happens to us is we start to, instead of continuing to try to strive and stretch and do new things, we start to play on the defensive. We start to protect the win as opposed to going for the win, right? Like we start to protect the game as opposed to stretching and going to new heights. And I think that that's something that, the pandemic, it has been awful in many ways. Like, obviously the loss of so many lives is tragic beyond words. The setbacks, the economic, ramifications, all of those things. But I will say that it has been a massive wake-up call. I've been a coach since 2002. I've been helping other coaches since 2008. And I've never seen a wave of awareness, self-awareness, as I have in this last year, of people, I think, becoming aware that, hey, wow, I have been living on autopilot, to use Antonio's language. They've been living on autopilot, but I think a lot of people have said, life is a lot shorter than I thought, and there's people that we know. My wife is a cancer survivor as one of them. There are people who have those catalytic moments in their life where they get diagnosed with something, or, they survive a car accident or whatever. And those are a wake-up call. But we all have had this wake-up call all at the same time. And I know, at least in our generation, we've never had that kind of across the board experience from a global perspective. Even world wars haven't been from a global perspective like this has been. So I think it's this massive wake-up call. I've got one of my coaching clients is in Singapore. So they've been a couple of years ahead of us, or a couple months ahead of us in this whole COVID thing. And she told me, she's like, about a month into it, she's like, get ready, because there's this wave of self-awareness that's coming to America. Get ready for that. And I was like, gosh, I didn't know what she was talking about until I saw it. And then it's absolutely true.
Have you found that there has been a big sort of surge of people who are coming to you saying, okay, maybe I listened to the podcast for a couple years, maybe I dabbled in the app a little bit,
right?
Like, now I want to be coached by you. Like now I'm really, did you see that?
It is. Yeah, it's interesting. I do the podcast because it is good from a promotional standpoint, getting my brand out there. But, it's probably a little bit like Coffee with Kim. There's good ripple effects for your business when you do this, but I know this is a passion thing for you, right? Like, you would do this if it made you no money because you're really good at it and it does the world a whole lot of good. And I know that, that's kind of dream thing do for me is I love doing it. I mean, it's the ultimate excuse to get to interview crazy, cool people. Like, come on, it's the best excuse. It's the best excuse, like you said, to stalk people. Like, oh my gosh, right? And so I would do it anyway. But yeah, I would say in this last year, we've heard from more people that, have said, gosh, I've been listening to the podcast for years, and now I want to go deeper. Now I want to get help. And, they either reach out for one-on-one coaching or some of the other programs that we do. But it really has been a catalytic moment for so many people. So it's amazing to get to experience all this together.
And I feel like it's been a big sort of moment for you the last couple of months. I mean, two things in particular. One, the fact that you have passed the 300 episode mark of your podcast, which is massive. Like, I don't think people realize just how big of a deal that is. Like, most podcasts get to like maybe 100,
right?
And then people take breaks or they fall off. I mean, kind of getting past that 300 mark is pretty gnarly. Did you find, and I find this with successful people, and I know you're super into this, so I'm curious, did you find yourself kind of able to really sit in gratitude and celebrate, or did you find yourself already kind of like Kilimanjaro, like next mountain, okay, now we got to get to 400, now we got to get to 600, like what did that split look like for you? Because I feel like for successful people, that is a very hard balance sometimes.
It is. I appreciate that. And I'm so glad I'm not like selling a book or anything with this conversation. Like, you and I are just having this conversation. So I have no agenda, you know what I mean? So I'm just going to be totally real with you. So it was, I would say, a complete hybrid. All right. So I would say that we did celebrate, like my family, my wife and my boys went out. We went out for dinner, went to a Mexican restaurant, celebrated the whole thing. Right. And that was fun. But it happened over COVID. So we had been planning on getting people together. Like, I had planned on inviting previous guests to come and hang out. And we didn't get to do any of that, like none of that. So it was a little surreal, and we heard from people. That part was great. My mom was really excited. So, big shout out to Ron and Dee Matthews. They were there to support me, all of those things. But, like you said, it's one of those that successful people have to watch out for, what I call the blast past experience, which is to have a goal, really work towards that goal. And then once you achieve it, blast past it and not really enjoy it. And there was probably a little bit of that just because, again, it was happening at such a weird and wild time. And what's also interesting is that, with people with podcasts know what I'm talking about, but COVID was really hard on podcasts, at least for a season. Like a lot of podcasts almost immediately lost half of their audience in about in about a month, which was really scary. And the irony too, and I didn't talk about this a lot when it happened, but I shared it a couple of episodes later. But right around episode 300,
you got that tech issue.
We had that tech issue, and we lost 90% of our audience. They just vaporized, just gone. So it was really surreal. And it's one of those where I don't think there's any accidents in the world. And I believe in God and all that. And I don't believe that God caused that to happen. But I do think it was really wild because that's exactly what happened. So we're coming into episode 300. It was at episode 299 where all of a sudden there was a tech issue. Mostly it was with Apple, and we lost 90% of our audience based on a plugin that my original producer had used that broke, that was buried. It was deep in the engine, all that stuff, and just gone. And it was so surreal because here we were on this precipice, right? Like we could see the summit of Everest, and it was like, oh crap. We ran out of sandwiches, got to turn around. It was like, wait, what the crap? It's right there. We could go get it. And it's funny because what that caused me to do is, of course, cry, bawl like a baby, roll up on the floor for just a little bit like a tub of glue. But after that, it allowed me to do something that was really powerful. And that was to say, why am I doing it? Am I doing it based on, the thousands of people from around the world that listen to this thing? Or am I doing it because I feel called to it? Am I doing it because I feel like these kinds of concepts need to get out into the world and I want to do it whether there's 10 or 10,000 or 100,000 people listening? And so it really got me back to zero a little bit, which it's not how I recommend. Not how I recommend celebrating something like this. Don't try to go get rid of 90% of your audience right when you're going to have something really big happen. Just don't try to do it. But when I look back, it's like, wow, that actually was a gift because I decided it was kind of funny, Kim, like at 3:01, I kind of was like, the audience still wasn't officially back yet. We hadn't figured out the glitch. And I was asking myself, I could kind of walk away. I could put a pin in this and say, that was successful. I hit this mark. I'm done. Put it on the shelf, call it a success, and good. And it was tempting for a second because there was a part of me that's like, whatever, I did all that work and now nothing. But then I was like, no, that's not how I want to look at it. And that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I feel called to do it. I do it because I feel like it needs to be, out in the world. I feel like the people that I talk to, people like you, like I want to get your voice even further. I want people, to be introduced to the people that I talk with. So I'm like, I'm still doing it. If I only had 10 people listening to this thing, I'm still going to do it. And what's wild is the very next week we were able to figure things out and we got everybody back, which was absolutely amazing. So I don't know why those things happen and why it happened right around 300, but it was a huge milestone for me and helped make all the difference.
Well, and I feel like going back and finding your why, to Kelly's point, is really a question that, again, in that blast past mindset,
yep.
Sometimes we don't stop and ask why. And you had a really good quote, and I'm probably going to jumble it, so you're going to have to help me. But it was like, maybe a setback is a set up.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
Yep, that's so right. Yeah, absolutely. And if not, you made it sound better than I probably did. So yeah, it's one of those things that's interesting. An episode that's coming out next week, Dream, Think, Do, it's about a mom and a daughter who came to one of our events, and the daughter, who was 9 at the time, she posted a dream of she wanted to write a book. And what's absolutely amazing is I just did a follow-up interview with them because it's been a number of years now, about 4 years ago that she did this. And what's crazy about it is that she was actually able to write that book. As a 9-year-old, she was able to write that book, and her mom walked alongside her, all of those things. They did a really neat thing, and they were able to get it into almost every school in the state that they're in. It was called Victoria, the Drama Investigator. It's all about a 9-year-old girl who helps to eliminate drama in her school. So just absolutely amazing. Well, I was able to do a follow-up with this mom and daughter because what's interesting is the mom shared with me that Maya wrote the book at 9. And about a year later, she was having trouble in the classroom. And what's crazy about it is she wrote the book. After writing the book, she was invited to speak in front of all of these state fair queens, because that was one of the ways to spread the word about the book, and that those state fair queens took the books back to their, various schools and things like that. So much fun. And here's this 9-year-old, 10-year-old at that point speaking in front of this, room full of beautiful state fair queens, right? How great is that? And, it stirred in her ability to speak and hold an audience. Like her mom said, here are these high school, female students, right, that are just totally caught up in this little 10-year-old story. And they realized, oh my gosh, she could write a book. She can, speak in front of a group of what would be a very imposing audience for most people. And she was able to drop it like it was hot. And the very next year, they found out she actually had dyslexia, a very specific form of dyslexia. So at the very time she was, being diagnosed for having learning disorders, she was also doing all these amazing things. And her mom said that had we not started on that dream pursuit, who knows what that diagnosis would have meant to her. But because she had all of these experiences in her bag, she had all these experiences behind her, she was like, we'll work through that. Like, that's nothing compared to writing a book and speaking in front of audiences. She went on to speak at like 60 schools in 1 month to promote the book, to get the whole thing out there about navigating drama, all these things, right? And I interviewed him, and, this little girl who's not so little now, she's like 14 and amazing and probably going to run the world someday, I hope. But she's like, yeah, I mean, it's something I've got to navigate, but I can do that. Right. And she's like, I learned all of that as I was walking out this dream pursuit. And that's kind of your point, is like that setback is also a set up. I believe that, so often, sometimes those things that we see as, oh my gosh, that is a huge challenge, and I don't mean to be trite by any means, but it, I know it, everybody that's watching knows this, that so often our best opportunities are hidden first by what looks like challenges. And that's definitely what their experience has been.
And when you have like someone who might be joining us today and who's like sitting behind their coffee mug being like, well, easy for Rich to say, like, hey, I mean, what are some like 101, maybe it's steps, maybe it's a journaling practice, I don't know, that to kind of help people get unstuck when it comes to dreaming? Because
yes.
I think it is easier for kids, like in the example you gave, to kind of come up with this stuff. And I think we, not to sound like Peter Pan and Wendy, but I think we like lose some of that. Like,
for sure.
Yep. And so how do you kind of get your mojo back?
Absolutely. That's a great question. It's an important question. And I think in some ways it's kind of it's a problem with the word dream sometimes, right? Like, I don't know about you, but like, yeah, there's a part of me that didn't even want to have the word dream and dream thing do, because dream now, I don't think it's always been this way, but dream now kind of has like, it's easy to kind of poo-poo, right? Like, oh, dream, rainbow butterflies, little ponies, right? Like, come on, how cotton candy can you get? It's so funny. I'm not kidding. I printed this off because I just got an email today from somebody who participated in one of our events a couple of years ago. And he's a medical professional. And he actually said, and I got this about an hour before I'm hopping on with you, but he said, I participated in one of your events last year. And he said, and he literally says, I normally don't enjoy cutesy activities like this, like that. He says cutesy right there, and no like little smiley face or a wink. He's still calling it cutesy, right? But he lists out that he posted 4 dreams. And he said at the time, those seemed kind of crazy, but he gave himself, he's like, to your point, I gave myself permission to dream, outside circumstance. I said, what are some of those things? And then he gave me an update that all of those things have actually come true over the last 2-3 years, which is incredible. Like, one of them is actually getting a patent. One of them was launching a business with his wife, all that stuff. And he was letting me know, hey, I've been listening to the podcast. I appreciate you. So I think that kind of speaks to no matter which category you put dream in, whether you love it and you go, hell yeah, when you hear that word, or you're like cutesy, that's just fine. And if it's easier for you to actually ask yourself, maybe you have a rub with what are my dreams, right? Maybe the better question is, what do you want to experience in life? Like, what are some of those things you want to experience, right? Our events and our app, we have an app called Dream Together. And what we do is we, challenge people, encourage people to think about some of their dreams, write them down. But one of the things that we do to encourage that is we suggest categories, dream categories, because oftentimes people put a lot of pressure on their dreams, or people somehow got it in their heads that they've got to have one big dream. Like, what's my one big dream? Well, I'm a recovering perfectionist. Asking yourself a question like, what's my one big dream? If I asked myself that, my head would explode, right? Like, it's one of those things where the perfectionist side of me is like, oh, I've got to get it perfect. If I've only got one, I got to get it perfect. So we encourage people to say, hey, think about some of those dream categories. Like, what are some of your dreams when it comes to travel? What are some of your dreams when it comes to education? What are some of your dreams when it comes to relationships? What are some of your dreams when it comes to your career? What are some of your dreams when it comes to business? And my favorite one, there's a bunch of different categories, but my favorite one is, what are some of your dreams that defy categorization? Because you've got some of those where you're like, oh, it's not really travel and it's kind of weird. And I don't know that everybody will understand it, but that's one of my dreams, right? So that's fine. Have some that defy categorization too. But that's one of the things that we found really helps people is instead of asking themselves that one tremendous, what's my one big dream? What's my one purpose in life? That's a lot of pressure. This is my day job and I don't even recommend that question. What I say is, all right, think about those categories, right? Because, hey, especially travel. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to kick the door open on travel and let's just go see the world again, right? But to be able to say, all right, what are some of my goals? What are some of my dreams when it comes to travel? What are some of my dreams when it comes to my relationships? What are some of my dreams when it comes to my career? And if it's easier to use the word experiences, great. What are some of those things you want to experience in your career? What are some of those things you want to experience in your relationships? What are some of those things you want to experience as you travel the country or the globe? If that's an easier word, that's great. But that usually opening up the possibilities usually makes it a lower hurdle to get over, but it allows it to still be a very important process to get that clarity.
Which is huge because I feel like the clarity, at least from my sense, but I'm curious, obviously you work with thousands of people, to me, the clarity is important because when you get to the do section, I find that for me, sort of like what you said as a perfectionist, I can't look at like the big perfect picture because I'll just beat myself up and I'll have like analysis paralysis. I have to break it down into like baby steps. Like,
that's right.
Okay, I'm going to make this survey. Okay, I'm going to announce this survey on LinkedIn. Like, I have to give myself like the tiniest steps. Is that something that's common with a lot of the people that you work with, or do you guys really look at it as, more like bigger strides?
I love this conversation. We get to go 4 hours, right? Like we get to go 4 hours. Okay, so I love this question because it's so important, and it's a both and. It's a both and because you and I both are strategists at heart, right? But we also can get wrapped around the axle pretty quickly, right? I think you're a much better strategist than I am, but that's something that I know is that I love strategy. I love to-do lists. I love flow charts. I love mind maps. Oh my gosh. When I do a mind map, it is a thing of freaking beauty. You know what I mean? Like, oh, look at how this is going to go. And so understanding those big steps, the big pieces that you think are going to be a part of that dream pursuit, right? That can be a very important exercise. And then understanding some of the small steps, like to be able to say, all right, what's a small but significant step that I can take next, right? That is a really important question to ask yourself, to be able to say, all right, what are some of those small but significant steps that I know that I'm going to need to take? And to my best understanding, kind of to create a hypothesis, which I love the scientific method. I was horrible at science in high school. My science teachers would tell you, oh my gosh, Mitch, never talk about science. But I have since fallen in love with the scientific method, right? And when you look at the scientific method, it's like discover and clarify what is it that you want to do, build a hypothesis, which by definition is just a best guess, which I think is probably one of the best ways to describe a plan. It's a hypothesis. It's an educated, it's an informed guess, you know? And so it's that thing of being able to say, what are some of the big pieces? What are some of the small pieces that I need to know that I probably should do relatively soon? Like, what's that significant, that small but significant step that I could take next? But here's the magic, I think, is also being willing to be open to the mystery. Because you and I both know, as being entrepreneurs, content creators, human beings walking around, right? Some of the best stuff is the stuff we didn't see coming. It's the stuff that we only find when we step out. Like one of the best analogies that I need, because I am also a recovering worrier. I got all sorts of issues, Kim. So I got, recovering perfectionist, recovering worrier. But one of the best pictures that I keep in mind when it comes to dream pursuits. And again, I'm kind of I like prayer and all that stuff. And so I always kind of look through the lens of sometimes God gives me nudges to do stuff. But I think sometimes people feel like they're a ship in a harbor, right? And they're tied to the dock, right? And sometimes they get a picture of a goal, a dream. Sometimes they get a nudge. Maybe they feel like they've been praying and they felt called to do something, right? And it's like they see that island that's just out there on the horizon, and they know they've got to unhook, they got to untether from the dock and then chart a course, right? Leave that safe harbor and start to go out. But I know from many of the dream journeys that I've been on and a number of the dream journeys that I've helped people, I've walked alongside as a coach, one of the things that I see time and time again is sometimes that first goal, that first dream, that first island that's out there that we think that we're headed to, that's just to get us out of the dock. And then once we're out of the harbor, right, then we get out in that big blue ocean. And then all of a sudden we see that other thing. Sometimes we actually can route through that first dream, that first goal. But oftentimes it's once we're out in those open waters, that's when the mystery gets unveiled. That's when we really see what's next or what we're really called to do. And we could never have seen it from the safety of the harbor. And so I really do believe in what I call the dream journey, because it's multifaceted, and usually every dream has a back door that will introduce you to yet another dream.
Well, and I feel like that's something that I always am sort of like getting on my soapbox about, is that people think that whether it's in business or life, you're successful because you worked for it. Like, yeah. Yes, you do have to work. You can't just like eat bonbons and ice cream all day in bed and like be successful.
Although who doesn't like a little bonbon? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I mean, this girl, for sure. But like I say to so much people that you have to create luck. And how do you do that? You create serendipities. And how do you do that? You put yourself out there. You get in circles, you interact with people. And it's very similar, because when you get yourself out of that harbor, all of a sudden, all these lucky things start happening. Oh, it's so lucky I ran into this person. Oh, it's so lucky that person introduced me to this person. Right. The luck really has to start with you sort of being audacious about your dream. And so I'm curious for you, you made this really bold statement, which, I listened to the podcast, so I hear you talk about it. But for those who don't and might be joining us for the first time, Mitch is talking about making 1 million dreams come true. And that number is a big, what is it? BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. I mean, 1 million
it's stupid.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And it's one of those where I got to tell you, when I started to speak to that dream, at first, I've been talking about 1 million dreams for a long time. And it's like, all right, 1 million dreams in my lifetime. And then as I was praying, I always pray, I pray all the time, but at the end of the year, I always say, what's the theme for next year? What's the thing, what are some of the things that I should focus in on? And as I was doing that, and some might put that in the category of meditation or visioning or whatever, but that's, prayer is kind of my lens. And as I was praying through it, I saw that, 1 million dreams. And then I realized like the time thing is just arbitrary, right? Like it's a big audacious idea. It's a big, audacious number anyway. So it's like, why not say in 1 year? Right. And then my thought was, well, crap, how do I do it? Now, here's the thing. This is a good example of the dream, think, do, right? Because all three elements are so important. It is important to dream, it's important to think, and it's important to do, right? Now, the problem is that oftentimes we start to think too early, and that shuts down our ability to really dream. So this is what happened with me. I had the thought like, wow, 1 million dreams in a year, not a lifetime, 1 million dreams in a year. That's amazing. And I felt my heart race. I felt like excitement. I felt like, holy crap, like that's exciting. And it makes me want to throw up just a little bit, all that stuff, right? Like that feels right. But then my thinking kicked in like, yeah, but right. And good thinking is powerful, effective, important. Bad thinking is the yeah, buts. Like, yeah, but in a year. And do you really have that kind of following? Do you really have that kind of, fill in the blank, right? Are you capable? Are you worthy? All those things, right? Bad questions. And I was like, wait, I'm still in dreaming mode. Like, what if that might happen? What might that look like? Who could we impact? And I started to envision, I'm wildly blessed to say we have listeners everywhere around the world, but I'm like, what if there were people dreaming together in Africa? What if there were people dreaming together in Iceland? What if there were people dreaming together in Greenland, wherever, right? Pick your spot. And I'm like, how freaking cool would that be? And when you start thinking about it from that perspective, 1 million people's not that much, right? When you think about the billions of people that are on the planet, 1 million's kind of small. So it allowed me staying and dreaming just a little bit longer, helped me to bolster to then when I moved into thinking, I wasn't thinking about the bad questions, the yeah, buts and are yous, but the how could we? What if? What might that look like? And then basically I started to say, what are some things that I can do to control, like that I can control? So to your point, you kind of do the things that are your best guess, the things that you can control. And, and things like this week happen. So it's wild. You've probably had this happen too, but over the course of the last 3 months, I've done numerous podcast interviews with different people. And what's wild about that is that each one of them said, all right, we're going to put you, in our lineup, da, 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 da. And, if you want to call it serendipity, if you want to call it luck, if you want to call it divine timing, 4 of those, this, and then I was on Amberly Lago's podcast, which just hit today. I got interviewed by Antonio Neves, who we talked about earlier, for his podcast, which is absolutely amazing. Amberly's is amazing. Antonio's is amazing. Those all hit. And then I was on another podcast that I did. I can't even remember when I did the interview, but I just found out that one hit today. So it's like I'm doing a book launch and there's no book or whatever, like you just never know. And that's the thing where you do the work that, you put your hand to the plow on the field that's in front of you, right? You do the work that you can, you plant the seeds, and then you trust that the rain's going to come at the right time. Right. And so I don't know if we'll hit 1 million, but we're continuing to move forward like we will. And a lot of times when we've set a big audacious goal like that, or gone after a big audacious dream like that, oftentimes it's worked out, sometimes even better than we thought. And even those times when it didn't, it is usually one of the situations where I talked about where we headed towards one island and that exposed us to a whole other world. So I figure even if it doesn't work out at 1 million, we're still going to be in good company. And my guess is it's going to reveal something else even better. So that's kind of, again, embracing the mystery of all of it, which as a recovering perfectionist, as a recovering worrier, I realize how much of a stretch that is. But when you are willing to lean into that and embrace some of the mystery and look forward to some of the mystery being unveiled, it's one of those things that can really help to make this whole thing a whole lot more fun.
Well, I'm curious, as you start to think about like, okay, I dream, I have this dream.
Yep.
Maybe, for you, it's touching 1 million lives, for somebody else, it might be another thing, whatever that is.
Right.
And you kind of give yourself, I love what you said, what is it? Are you and but what, or but if I
but
don't
who
know.
Yes, are you and but who are you, but yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's like my internal dialogue pretty much every day. So yeah, that resonated, that hit close to home. where in the process do you kind of, I think what's so great about this stuff that you teach is that it is about collaboration, it is about sharing.
Yes.
But I know sometimes it's scary to share a dream or a goal or an experience that you want to have. Where in the process do you start telling other people that, I do want to experience entrepreneurship, or I do want to experience, is it in the think phase, or is it already when you're in the do phase and maybe you've made some baby steps and like you have some forward momentum, or when do you let other people in?
Great question. Yeah. So there's kind of some different rings to that. So one of the things we talk about is kind of thinking like 3 rings. Okay. The first ring is kind of your inner circle. And when it comes to dreams, what I always say is think about who are a couple of your advocates. You probably have family members that you love, but they shouldn't be the person that you tell first about new dreams, right? Like I've got a couple of uncles that are fantastic people, but they kind of feel like the reason they're on the earth is to keep everybody safe and to shoot down most ideas that might cause risk, right? Like, so I love them for it. That's fantastic, but I'm not going to go to them in those stages. But I do have a couple of friends. My wife is amazing at helping me think through dreams. And that doesn't always mean that they're just saying yes immediately, but those friends who will be like, oh my gosh, tell me more. Why is that important to you? That's exciting. Like that they would be open to dialogue, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to immediately take steps, but to have a couple of those people that are willing to be that encourager for you, that sounding board. And I always have somebody who says, yeah, but I don't have that. Well, one of the ways to do that, one of the ways to create those relationships is to be that for someone else. So check yourself, look around and say, hey, is there somebody that you could be encouraging? And the more you do that, the more you're going to have that in your life. So that's the inner circle. That's the inner ring. Second ring, though, is that's when it starts to, when you do start to move into the think phase, some of the questions that you should be asking yourself, you can be asking yourself is, who can I be learning from? And I talk about this a little bit in my book called Dream Job Redefined, where there's ways where you can attract actual mentors, or what we call e-mentors, which, you're an e-mentor for thousands, I'm sure, because e-mentors are people that you can learn from. I mean, God bless the era that we live in. We got our messes and we got our quirks, but my gosh, like I can go to Apple Podcasts, plug in a topic, and all of a sudden I've got, connections to amazing minds, right? So that's one way to be able to tap into other folks, is learn from other folks, but then to be able to say, all right, who locally, and locally can mean globally, especially because the interwebs and all of that, but like, who can I be learning from? Who can I reach out to? Who could I share this idea with? Who might have a complementary dream to me? I always say it's really tempting, especially for successful people. It's really tempting to hide our dreams, especially if we feel like we need something or that we don't have something. But one of the things we've found, especially for people who are willing to be a little bit more bold, is as you walk around with your dream, thinking about your dream and maybe mentioning, it's not shouting it from the rooftops all the time, because that gets a little weird and old and awkward sometimes, right? Yeah. But if you think of it as a puzzle piece, you're walking around with a puzzle piece. It could very well be that the need that you have for your dream is someone else's dream. So I'll give you an example of this. We've talked about this, that part of how I do what I do is I am wildly blessed. Every time I think about it, I get choked up. Like, I am wildly blessed by the people that I'm surrounded with. I have, for one part of our business, I have a business partner. His name is David Nadler. And we had 2 locking puzzle pieces. I had, all of this training that I wanted to help coaches with. And I love working with coaches as an example. David is an incredible strategic mind. And the last thing he wants to do is stand in front of an audience and deliver content. But he's an incredible business strategist, being able to build platforms, technology, just all of those things. And our puzzle pieces locked together. And we've had a business together for years. And it's been absolutely amazing. He's doing his thing. I'm doing my thing. Lindsay Palmer is my event director. Absolutely wildly talented person. She came to me as a junior when she was going to Duquesne, saw me speak at a leadership conference. She came up to me and said, I want to work for you someday. And I said, I'm impressed by that. Prove it. Right. And so we found different ways for her to work for me while she was still going to Duquesne in Pittsburgh. And now she works for me. She's got her own business and she works for me. And it's one of those things where our puzzle pieces locked and connected. And so, to answer your earlier question, how do we get so much stuff done? Like, I don't. Like, I get my stuff done, and then I'm surrounded by incredibly brilliant people who are also incented to see this thing be successful, and they're walking out their dreams too, and these puzzle pieces just lock.
I mean, it really does. It's so corny, and I hate when I say it. I'm sure like you when I say it on podcasts or interviews, but like, it takes a village. Like,
for sure.
So corny. It's like,
right. Exactly.
It's true.
Yep. It's trite because it's true. And it needs to be repeated, because I don't know about you, but like, I think that some people might say, oh, it's the bravado, it's the whatever, that we don't want to admit that we need help. But when we are willing to be humble enough to say we do need help. And I think just as importantly, when we're willing to honor somebody else's gifting, right? To be able to say, I need that. Like, David, as an example, my business partner, he's got stuff going on in his head I wouldn't even try to unravel. You know what I mean? I'm blown away by the brilliance. I don't want it. I just need him to do it. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where that's been absolutely amazing. And we can honor each other. And that's oftentimes one of the things we'll do is, like, when we try to celebrate major milestones from time to time, we'll just make a point to say, gosh, I just so want to honor what you're doing. And, we're corny and goofy, and we, we're good friends as well, but it is that honoring of other people's gifting too. And so, I think that that's a big part of the dream pursuit is sometimes, and a part of that mystery is to say, gosh, I wonder who I'm going to meet. Right. I wonder who I'm going to need. Right. And I wonder who I'm going to get to work with, and to be able to say, gosh, that's the kind of formula that makes for some of the best movies ever, like Star Wars. Hello. It's just a combination of people finding each other, like finding their own gifts and then finding each other to have the big win. Right. So it's like, hey, if it works for Star Wars, maybe we should use it. You know what I mean? So
100%. I'm ready to be Luke Skywalker.
Right. Bring it on. Right. Exactly right. I got my Han Solo vest in my closet right over there. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I'm about to make you my Yoda, because I would like to copy your homework when it comes to these like speed round questions.
Yes, I love it.
So, are you ready?
I think so.
I'm ready.
I love it. Yes.
Okay. What is something that you've started using or doing lately? Could be like an app, could be a practice. I don't know, but you're obsessed with it. You're like loving it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to probably take a little bit different angle on this. But I got a puppy. It's not an app, unless an app pees all over the place, right? But I got a puppy, and this puppy is an Akita puppy. I've wanted an Akita we figured it out. I've wanted an Akita for about 30 years, and an Akita is basically a small horse. It's not a big dog. It's a small horse, but I got an Akita. We as a family got an Akita, just 2 weeks ago. And I was thinking about this, like, because one of the things, we haven't had a puppy. We've had dogs for about 25, 30 years, but we haven't had a puppy in over 12 years. And I've forgotten what work it takes to have a puppy. But I've realized, one, the puppy is cute as all get out, like break the internet cute. So you can go to my social and check it out. He is freaking adorable. But one of the things that it's done lately is, honestly, the process, not the puppy himself, but the process has frankly kind of pissed me off a little bit. Like, it's totally inconvenient, totally messy. Like, I got pee on stuff I've never had pee on. You know what I mean? Like, and it's inconvenient. I got to feed the dog, got to water the dog, all that stuff. But here's the thing. I've also realized it's forcing me to slow down. It's also causing me to take walks. This little puppy, his name is Hero. Who's little now, going to be big, right? Hero is also causing me to just sit and enjoy 5 minutes. I haven't been doing that as much lately, to be perfectly honest. Like, COVID has, for some people, life has slowed down. For most people I know, it's sped up because everything's hybrid, right? Like, it's all busy. This puppy has been incredible. So what I'd say is, you don't have to get a puppy to do this, but I just want to encourage you, and maybe get a puppy, but just give yourself that permission to slow down just a little bit. Take some walks, enjoy 5 minutes from time to time. Just go stand outside. It's funny. I'm not a smoker, Kim, but I've always kind of been jealous of like standing outside and smoking. Like that's kind of brilliant. And I've realized now this puppy is my smoke break because I got to go and let him out, every hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. And I'm like, I got a smoke break. So I would encourage people to either get a puppy or just give yourself a little bit extra time.
Get a puppy, don't take up smoking.
Right. Exactly. Good clarification. I appreciate you bringing that in. Yeah. Thanks for landing that plane.
In the form of four-legged people.
Right. Exactly. I love it. Yes.
I know you've been so insanely busy during COVID, but when you do get, some spare minutes to learn some things, I know you're on a constant quest, for self-betterment and knowledge. What's something that you're looking forward to learning this year or maybe going into 2022?
Yeah. So it's funny. I thought of a couple things. When I saw that question, I thought of a couple things. One kind of sounded douchey, but it's still true. So I'm going to say it is learning to scale our business from 6 figures to 7 figures. And I don't say that to say, check me out. Like, trust me, this is real. It's raw. It's all that stuff. So really figuring out how to go from 6 figures to 7 figures, but to still be able to touch and love on our clients and the people that we serve in a way where they don't feel any different, but we're able to help more people. So that's a big thing for me this year. So really learning, and I, there's all sorts of programs out there. And now that I said this, Mark Zuckerberg, I'm going to see all in my feed, how to go to 6 figures, 7 figures, all that stuff. But I really do want to learn from people that have done it in unique and powerful ways. Then one of the other big things, and again, I'm not trying to sell a book. So this is like me really answering the question, not to say that people selling a book aren't being real and authentic, but you know what I'm saying? I'm always working on hearing from God more. That's one of my favorite things and something that I'm always pursuing more of. And that's always, I think it's going to be a lifelong pursuit. And every time I lean into it, I get more out of it. Not perfectly and all of that, but so that's another goal for the year.
I love that. And I feel like so much of that is just staying open, absorbing good stuff. I say all the time, people laugh, but like I never watch the news on Twitter. I unsubscribed from CNN. I unsubscribed from all of the news channels. So it's like, I can't, I have to keep the channels clear.
It's a big deal.
The crazy, you know?
Absolutely. There was a deeply theological movie called Crocodile Dundee that came out in the 80s. I don't know if you ever saw it. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend going back and see it. It was pretty funny, but there's this great scene where this reporter goes out into the outback and meets Crocodile Dundee in the outback of Australia. And she's listing out all of these, things that are happening from a global economic, political, aspects. And she's like, don't you worry about this, Mick? Don't you worry about this? And he's like, out here? Not at all. And you're like, you saw this peacefulness. And I'm like, you don't have to live in the outback to walk in that kind of peacefulness. And you and I both know, we will get exposed to news and media without having to pursue it. Well, certainly without having it open and watching it all the time. And I think, you and I both, we're not talking about burying our heads in sand and not staying involved, having an impact where we can have an impact. But I agree with you. We have access to more content and information than any other generation of our time. And that's a blessing and a curse. We have to use it intentionally or it will kill us. So I'm with you. Yep.
You have to use it intentionally. And so for you, what are some amazing humans or accounts or brands, people that you follow, whether it's on Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram, like who are those bright lights for you? Like, this makes me feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny because I don't know if Antonio's still on here, but whether he was going to be on here or not, I was going to point to him because Antonio, as you well know, and his bride, Brigitte, are incredible. I think they are going to be one of the world's power couples. They are incredible. Antonio Neves and his book, Stop Living on Autopilot. are our go-to resources. I really believe just amazing people. I know them through and through. When we were in LA picking up our puppy, we actually got to stop and see them. We got to hang with the Nevs. So they are incredible. And I really want to point to them. You, of course, being one of those people that it's just incredible, the content that you put out there, and you are who you say you are. And I love that. Like I can so appreciate so many different people and all they've achieved. But what I love the most is when I could say, that person is authentically that person, whether the microphone's on, whether the camera's on, like that person is who they are. And that's you too, which I love. One person that maybe you might be familiar with or not, but Andy Grammer is somebody, he's a musician, but I would also say he's a poet. He's a thinker. He's I think in some ways a modern day theologian, but if you're not familiar with his music, go check him out, but definitely follow him on social because he is insanely talented. But he drops these pearls of wisdom from time to time that sometimes you're like, duh, like, of course he just reinforces something, and then other times he throws these things out there where you're like, I have never thought about that before. That is brilliant. So Andy Grammer is one of those folks that I wanted to point to.
He's a great one. I feel like on Instagram, he makes really fun Instagram stories and stuff. Yeah.
And he's just cultivating community. And obviously he's had a number of hardships in his life. So you can see that coming through. Like he is a true artist. He is gifted, but it's one of those that he is a thinker. And it's encouraging to follow him.
No, he's amazing. And
plus as an entrepreneur, sorry to interrupt, but as an entrepreneur, he's doing crazy cool stuff from a social media standpoint of building his audience. So even if you're not into music, you just want to learn how to build an audience, boy, watch what he's doing.
He's a master class if anybody likes marketing. He's like a good one to follow and be like,
yep, what absolutely
over here. No, I totally agree with you. That's such a good one. Okay. I would give everybody the homework assignment of going to follow Andy Grammer if they don't already. But if you could give everybody a homework assignment this week, it could be anything as a homework assignment. What would your homework to us be?
Can I give two real quick? One is going to be totally self-serving and the other one not. So the first one is, we've been talking about the power of giving yourself permission to dream and then connect with others. I want to invite everybody to download our app. It's completely free. It's called Dream Together. Download the app. You can use the code DreamThinkDo. It will allow you to gain access. And then if you want to create your own groups, you can, all of those things. So I just want to encourage you to do that. I know, Kim, maybe you're going to have a group too, which I would just encourage. If you do, that would be fantastic. So download the app. That's something you can do to start. The second thing, and it's in theme with what we've talked about, but a little different angle, is I want to encourage you sometime this week, give yourself permission to be a novice at something. Be a novice at something. Because again, I know you've got successful people that are listening to this, right? Like people that are killing it in different areas with their career and different industries and different backgrounds, all of that. But successful people, so often it's rare that we give ourselves that permission to just be new at something, to be a novice at something, to not be good at something. So I just want to encourage you, give yourself permission to be a novice, whether it's, joining some sort of class, whether it's online or now, classes are actually starting to happen, a painting class, a martial arts class, a meditation class. Give yourself full on permission to be a novice. You don't have to know what you're doing. You don't have to look good doing it. You can be messy, all of that stuff, but give yourself that permission to be a novice at something and see what kind of opportunities pop up.
I love that. Okay, if people are like, I love what you're putting out there, where's the best place that they can find you, follow you, get more little nuggets of wisdom from you?
Awesome. So probably the best place to go is just mitchmatthews.com. We spent our entire marketing budget coming up with that creative name. So it's mitchmatthews.com. And that's where you can find out more about the podcast and some of the stuff that we're doing, and that we can hang out more.
I love it, Mitch. You are the best.
Oh.
Thank you so much for spending your super valuable, super amazing time with us and me, because I feel like every time I talk to you, I leave with so much to think about in the best way possible.
Well, you were the bomb and you were an incredible interviewer. The time went so flippin' fast. It's amazing. And I felt like we were in a jazz band together and we were just riffing. So those are the best kinds of conversations. And it's just so great. I mean, it's incredible that, you know, the community that you're growing, the tribe, I know that they are wildly blessed by everything you bring them. And I know that I am wildly blessed by getting to know you. So thanks so much for having me on the show and for doing what you do.
Oh, thank you. And everybody, I hope you have a great rest of the week. And Mitch and I will see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.